What's up guys, it's Crash, and there is a ton of new Gray Zone Warfare information out there, and you know how we do it on this channel. I'm going to try to get you all of the information as efficiently as possible in kind of an unscripted conversational video. Then at the end, if you guys will do me the service, do me the favor, and stick around to the end, I have some really important thoughts, I think, on the release of Gray Zone Warfare and how it's going to play out. So I would love for you guys to stick around until then. If not, either way, I'm going to get you guys this information as fast as possible. What happened was, over on Vision Game, they did an interview with the art director and as well as the creative director for Gray Zone Warfare, but it wasn't in English. So I thought I could do you guys a favor, my English speaking audience. I went ahead and watched it through, read all the subtitles, and I took the important bits and the things that I thought were really interesting about the game and kind of broke those down. Now, they may kind of seem a little bit out of order, but I just kind of jotted down the high points in the order that they went through them. So that's how we'll go through it. But first, before we get into that, we got a tiny tidbit of an update from Mara over on Twitter. He is the creative director, and he showed the mini map. So you guys can see another small detail has been added to Gray Zone Warfare to enhance the sense of exploration and progress. Also, the map now zooms fluently, but it depends on mouse settings. So you guys can see a tidbit of the map right here. Take note of the size of the map by looking in the low right corner. You guys can see it starts out zoomed at 8x and then goes out to 3. You guys can see the landing zones as well as where you're at on the map. Looks really cool. The other thing that I think is of note here is when moving the cursor around, you guys can see the location, the X and Y coordinates for where your cursor is. So that might be how you call things out to your teammates and let people know where you're headed, where things are and stuff like that. So the lat longs on the cursor, I think, are really cool and really important. So we got that little bit of information earlier today. And then as far as the video, so this is a video from Vision Games. You guys should check that out after, the keyword being after you watch this video. I'll leave a link to their video if you want to go check it out and read the whole thing and get all the information that was there. I try to take the high points. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing that I thought was really cool is a question I've had for a long time, is he said that thermals are coming and night vision as well. And day night is something that they have planned for the first update. So that'll be really, really cool. I wondered if there was going to be a day night cycle. And then, as you guys know, thermals and night vision, especially thermals in the kind of dense jungle of Lemang, of the island, is going to be incredibly strong because you'll be able to see those heat signatures through all that vegetation and how that moves and stuff like that. It could be super, super strong to have thermals. And then he talked about when you start the game, you build a character, so kind of like an MMO with a lot of different details on like skin color, how the face will look, and then you're just dropped into a server. You can look for landing zones, or you can loot, or you can go to the base camp and check out the traders and missions. That's what they expect you to do. But the general theme of this whole video was about how non-linear this game is, kind of open sandbox. You can skip it and not even do any of the missions, or just run around, kill AI, loot up, get in fights and do stuff like that. Or if you want to progress the mission, uncover the mysteries of the island, you hang out in the base camp, level up the traders. That's how that works. What I thought was really interesting and really cool is he said that levels don't increase. Like if you think of the soft skills in Tarkov, like your kind of like your sniper skill or your stamina or your strength are two really big ones, that the longer you play, the more advantage you can get with your character becoming stronger or able to run farther. It doesn't work like that. Health and stamina are kind of fixed and more realistic. He thought that really didn't make sense, and I really do like that. It can be frustrating if you don't have, 8 hours a day to play, to have characters. I mean, back in the day before mantling in Tarkov, people could get into places of the map where others couldn't based on their strength because they could jump higher. So I think that's really cool, a little bit of a level playing field, and just makes more sense from a realism standpoint. The next thing he mentioned is, instead of like earning soft skills on progression, you kind of earn cosmetics, and there will be interchangeable shoes, gloves, shirts, and pants, so people will look different and have their own unique look. And if you followed the channel for a really long time, that's one of the things I really liked about World War III. Rest in peace, World War III. But that was one of my favorite things about that, is you could make your character, your soldier, look incredibly unique, and it just gives you some stock, some ownership, and a little bit of immersion, in my opinion. And then also he talked about like some of the later cosmetics you can unlock are like jeans, and if like the special forces used to use in Vietnam. So if you see someone running around in blue jeans, you know that they know what's going on. They probably have some really good gear, and you should be careful. So I think unlocking those cosmetics to where you kind of look like a badass, like when you've seen stuff, when you've been there for a long time, to have some clothing that you can kind of show off is a really neat mechanic, and it doesn't kind of change how the game plays, but it lets people know that you've been there. Another game that did this really well was Advanced Warfare back in the day. I just remember when my friends would play it, we all had different different, mixing matching gloves, boots, pants, you know, uppers and the exosuits and all that stuff. And I could pick out my friends. So I have a stack of buddies that I play games with a lot of the times, and I know what's going to happen is that they're going to get their own kind of individual look, and I'll be able to tell what they look like. So in game, we do this in Tarkov a little bit. A lot of us will put short sleeve shirts on because not a lot of people run those. And if I see sleeves, if I see bare arms, I don't shoot that person right away. So that's how my team works. So I think this could also be used from a gameplay standpoint to know what your buddies look like, because everybody kind of has a unique look. So I am super happy to hear about people being able to look completely different with the mixing and matching of all those clothing items. He mentioned the story is an adult story, and it actually got darker than they originally intended when they brought on the former PMC, Sean McVay. We talked about him in the first initial drop of intel from Madfinger Games, and it got a little bit more dark than they thought. So I thought that was really interesting. And then he went on to talk about animations and weapon handling. We talked about Spicy. We showed some of the information about him as a former Czech Special Forces soldier, and they basically went through and did a lot of work with him. He talked a little bit more in depth about that, how they filmed him. They filmed some of him, you know, doing really good reloads, some of them under stress with fumbling and things like that. And they really tried to dial in the animations and make those realistic. That's one of the first things I noticed from the trailers, that the animations were really good. But then they also brought, this is new information to me, they brought in a former combat medic as well to work with the healing animations and kind of how that would look. A lot of it is gamified and not realistic because, you know, if you really do get shot and die immediately, it's not that fun. Also, the same thing with kind of eating. It's not as frequent as Tarkov, but it reacts to how hard you're working. It can also react to the weather. If it's raining and you're wet, your metabolism kind of works like that. And also to go along the lines of the healing, getting hit with a bullet is incredibly complicated, it sounds like. So I'm really interested to see how this plays out, for better or for worse. But he says generally you won't insta die and be back at the respawn, because that kind of sucks in high stake games. You've had the loot item, you found a blue key card, you found a GPU, you found a Bitcoin, and you get shot by a scav in a bush across the map with 7mm buckshot, right? Like, we've all felt that, and that's a super bummer. So they try to draw out fights a little bit more. It's not simple HP. So this is another thing I'm really interested to see how it plays out. They talked about how terminal ballistics are simulated on the gun, but also what it hits, so that he went into a little bit more depth. We've heard a little bit about this earlier, but the body is split up into different cavities, whether or not there's an organ there or even bone, and how the bullet hits. And it can also, you know, you can break bones if that's hit, or if a critical organ is hit, like I'm assuming your heart or your brain, you pretty much do die. But other than that, it will generally cause bleeds, which lead to symptoms that you'll have, and then you can treat those. So I really think gunfights and things like that are going to have a massive dynamic feel to them, a wide range of how things can play out. And I really like that in high stakes game, the heart pumping, like really long gunfights. And I've had some of these in Tarkov, which are really cool. And with kind of the jungle, the layout, the thick cover, there's going to be a lot of chaotic moments. Do you stop? Do you heal? Do you treat your bleed first? Do you go ahead and try to transfuse blood to heal that first? It's not HP. It sounds like it kind of relies more on blood. They talked about injuries. They're more symptom based on where you get hit, and you kind of have to do triage on yourself, right? You have to figure out, okay, I need to stop the bleeding. Then do I add blood? Wait, do I need to fight first and help my buddy? All that meantime, trying to listen to comms and see where your friends are, where the other teams are, who's going on flanks. Like, some of the gunfights in this game are going to be crazy. I really feel like they're going to be pretty crazy. And then you also can, once someone bleeds out, they go back and they go into a coma. And at that point, when you lose all of the blood and you're in a coma, you have to be helped by someone else. It technically could be an enemy that you befriended in prox chat, which they talked about a little bit later, or one of your teammates. So that's why going in alone is going to be really difficult, because you don't have that advantage or that ability if you get down to be able to be picked back up by someone else. So overall, I'm just really interested to see how these are going to play out with the ballistics and the body, you know, not having, when the body gets hit, not having a simple HP system, you know, kind of having things, the bullets travel differently through different body cavities, potentially hitting bone, and all of the different ways to heal. It's going to be really cool to see how that all plays out. I'm sure it's going to need refining. I'm sure we'll be able to give feedback on that, but it's going to be something new and unique, and I'm pretty excited to see how it plays out. As far as gameplay goes, there's an onboarding area with kind of lower level AI and some loot, but you can skip that. You can play however you want. You can go directly to the hard stuff. You're probably going to get aced, but you can still check it out if you want to. We got a little bit more information about the map, talking about some of the POIs. Some of the bigger ones is going to be a military base, VIP resort, and a mall, and then many scattered POIs throughout. It sounds like the map is going to receive a lot of updates as they go on from early access, which I would totally expect that. But they want there to be every 1 to 200 meters some other small POIs where you can try to find loot. And then in the middle is the ground zero where whatever event happened, but we got some information about that in regards to early access as well. And he said it will be opened later after all the pillars of the game are done. Another cool tidbit that they touched on was a lot of the equipment in the game, they're not really purchased assets. They actually tried to acquire a lot of military equipment, and then they did 3D photogrammetric scans themselves within the studio. So the weapon assets are also, they went to the Royal Armory Museum and they actually modeled the guns and the parts within them. So it sounded like, based on what they said, that there's actually internal animations and the internal parts of the gun are actually modeled with the guns taking anywhere from, I believe they said like 15 to 20 parts within the guns, and they actually work. Like the hammer hits, the bolt moves, the cartridge moves through the gun, and all that stuff actually happens in game. So I thought that was really cool. And then that leads to, I think a lot of weapon customizations and part interchangeability would be really cool. I don't want it to be like too super granular, like I need to put a different sear spring on my M4 or something crazy like that, but having that all modeled, having that all potentially interchangeable could be pretty neat moving forward. The other thing he mentioned about is how the servers will actually function. There'll be 48 total players. 16 will be in your faction, so that leaves 32 potential enemies. So you have to keep that in mind while you're moving around the island. And then this is an important thing that I was really curious how it would work. This is going to be one of the first times, I think, that the Cycle Frontier did it a little bit. I never played that. So this is going to be the first time I've played a extraction style shooter with persistent servers, which I think cannot be understated how cool persistent servers could be with unpredictability of gameplay. We've talked about it quite a bit. But how it works is some quest items are local to you. So when you have a quest active, that's going to be there. If you have to go get something, that's going to be there for you no matter what. But if you have to kill a boss or something like that, and another PMC faction has already done that, someone else has killed the boss, he might already be gone and might not be there, and you'll have to wait for him to respawn. So I thought respawn, that's respawn. I don't know why I said that. Respawn, so you have to wait for him to come back. And then with that, there's constant respawning of loot and doors will close and stuff like that. So the server is constantly running, but it's also constantly regenerating too. So you really don't know what to expect. It's not like Tarkov where you know, hey, I spawned in this spot, I can be the first one to resort to open up Sanitar's office. You don't know that. You don't know anything, because anything could be coming from anywhere. You don't know at what point someone's working on another quest near you, or you might show up on a place and someone had just been there. The doors are still open and the loot is gone. That means somebody was just there. That could be kind of an eerie, cool feeling. Also, beyond that, it could be closed, it could be fresh and already regenerated. So basically what I'm trying to say is these persistent servers, the constant respawning of bosses and regenerating of loot and closing of doors, and kind of the server constantly regenerating itself, leads to 100% unpredictability in gameplay. And that's one of the things I'm most looking forward to, is the absolute unpredictability of what you might encounter when you go on a mission. I might have been doing a poor job of articulating that, but that is what I am excited about. If you think about it from a standpoint of Tarkov, like maybe you have to go get the bronze pocket watch or something like that, or maybe you need to find the stuff on the new Ground Zero map in Tarkov. Some of the ways I did that was me and my friend would go hide in the trash bags behind one of the stores and hide until there was like 5 minutes left in the raid and all the PMCs would be gone. And then we just had player scavs where we could run, grab our loot items, get out, no problem. So that's not going to be a thing. I know there's a meta, there's kind of a funny meta. I've done it several times to get harder quests done in Tarkov. I would literally go lay down in a bush, go do something else, work on something else for 15, 20 minutes, and then come back and do my quest and not ever run into any PMCs. That actually happens in Tarkov. With persistent service, constant regeneration, that's not going to happen. So I think that is really cool. Another unique thing was how PvP is going to work. And this is one of the last things that he touched on, was that there aren't really any quests to kill other players. He talked about situations where sometimes PMCs are friends in real life and they are on different, PMC factions. They work for different companies. So you might run into your buddies or something on a mission and you have to kind of work that out. And they want something like that within the game. They're not trying to foster or build hate for each other's factions and make, you know, instant, you know, hot engagements, fire right on enemies, fire at will right away. They hope to kind of have some interaction there. There's going to be prox chat. There's no XP for killing players, and you can work with prox chat to say, you know, hey, we can maybe split the loot, or hey, I'm working on this quest, can you let me pass? Or you can betray people, you know, you can say, hey, let's trade this, and then shoot the person while they go into their backpack. So there's a crazy amount of ways that interactions between other players could work out. But what I thought was interesting is this is obviously not PvP focused. Players, myself, we might make it PvP focused eventually, especially in the end game. But there aren't any quests to kill other players. There's no XP for killing other players. Basically, the only reward you get for killing other players is the loot. Those are pretty much the high points that we got from the interview. Now, as far as my opinions and where they stand right now on Gray Zone Warfare, I have been thinking of this over the last few weeks, and I've started to realize that I think in a nutshell, this game might get judged unfairly, and that's just the way it is. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but what's already happening, you guys could hear me when I talked about this video, is it gets compared to Tarkov. And what's going to be crazy is when this game comes out, my worry is just a little bit that it's going to get straight up 1-to-1 compared to Tarkov. This game has only been worked on a few years. This game is coming out in what is sounding like true early access. Now, I haven't played it. None of us have played it yet. We haven't seen really any raw gameplay loops or anything like that. So I'm just going off what I hear. We've got a lot of information from the studio about the game, and it really sounds like this is going to be a true early access in the sense of it's going to start out small. There's going to be things added over time. You know, they're going to add day-night cycles, thermals, stuff like that. Eventually, once all the pillars are done and everything's added and the map is finished, then they'll open up ground zero in the middle. This is where they're going to start getting feedback from players. But what I'm worried about is this game that's only been worked on for a few years is going to get compared to Tarkov, which has been worked on for like 10 years and been in like early access or beta for like 7 years. So there's going to be a little bit of an unfair comparison, in my opinion. You know, when Tarkov launched, when Tarkov did its alpha, it was literally factory. There were like 3 traders and it was just tiny little factory. When this game launches, you're going to get all the traders. You're going to get over 150 quests. Tarkov is now at 200. But there is in this game just going to be one map, 42 square meters, which is kilometers, which is actually pretty big. But what I'm worried about, fair or not, I think it's going to happen. I think people are going to say, well, this is Gray Zone. It's really cool, but Tarkov has this. Tarkov does this better. Tarkov does this better. Not keeping in account the caveat that Tarkov has been around a lot longer. So when you're not the first to the party, you get compared to the people who are already there. And I think that's going to happen with Gray Zone Warfare. So I'm trying to be cognizant of that as I talk about it and not get too excited about this game. But I think this has some really unique mechanics, and I hope those merits of the new and unique mechanics can kind of stand on its own, right? It can form its own identity and maybe get out from under the veil of Tarkov and be its own experience, and then go through its early access period, get everything added so we can see what these guys' vision are for this game. I'm still interested to see how things are going to work in the in game, how it's going to move going forward, what they're going to add as they move along. And with some of these details, I'm really excited to see how it plays out. I hope it does well. I hope it gets a fair shake from its player base and people understand that it's fairly new and a new studio that is taking their first foray into PC gaming from the mobile space. So all is that to be said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm pretty excited to get my hands on Gray Zone Warfare, hopefully sooner rather than later. And yeah, guys, if you made it to the end of the video, I can't thank you enough. That's incredibly kind of you. Have a great rest of your day. We'll hopefully see you later.